It's time to take a ride on the Steelers Afternoon Drive with our co-hosts Alan Saunders and Zachary Smith.
Welcome back to another episode of Steelers Afternoon Drive. I'm Zachary Smith. That is Alan Saunders. Alan, how are we feeling?
It's a short week coming up, feeling rushed, feeling cramped for time, as I imagine the teams are as they prepare for this Saturday's game.
Yeah, I wasn't sure where that was because it was like there was like a long sigh at the beginning of that. So like you're not necessarily doing bad. It's just everything's kind of crammed in. 7 days crammed into 6.
Yep. To use the Tomlinism, we got seven days to put in a 6-day bag. That's what we're doing this week, and next week it's going to be worse. So,
yeah, absolutely. Well, looking forward to that conversation throughout next week. Then we'll get into some stuff.
I know a lot of people are complaining about the schedule, and I want to talk about it.
What's the difference?
This schedule is not like unusually unfair, just in terms of like the timing of the days. Like I don't. It's not a big deal. Like it's like a normal. Like it's like the Steelers played Monday, Sunday, Thursday. Like I know nobody ever plays Wednesday before, but like other than the days of the week being a little wonky, like this is a normal Monday Night Football, following a Monday Night Football short week schedule for the Steelers. And next week will be a normal Thursday game week schedule for the Steelers. And while it's slightly unusual to have those two back to back, it's the same for the teams that are playing. So like it's not like the Steelers are being disadvantaged by this schedule in any way.
Yeah, I mean, as somebody that I appreciate having football another night of the week on Thursday night, but I think that we see pretty often that the product is impacted by that in a negative way, whether it is through injuries or just the product on the field. But it's not like you're saying, it's really not any different from that normal week. It's just different days of the week. Obviously, the one difference being we played the Eagles as opposed to like Baltimore played the Giants. Who did Houston just play? Kansas City played Cleveland, and then whoever Houston played. I don't remember who Houston played this past week. Miami. So yeah, they had, I guess, the tougher of the first games before going into, but then it's those 4 teams obviously having the same schedules as each other afterwards. So I don't know. I'm not making too much of it. I know people have been complaining a lot about it, but it is what it is. The Steelers have not complained about it, by the way.
Steelers have not complained about it at all. Even when like I try to complain about it, they're like, yeah, whatever, it's no big deal. I've not heard a single player like utter one.
You're like trying to get them to bait them in to say something negative about it.
No, just like general, like sort of like water cooler grousing about like, yeah, man, I don't even know what day of the week it is. This is so weird. They're like, yeah, whatever. It is what it is. Okay.
Well, I appreciate that mindset. Talk a little bit if you watched Hard Knocks last night. We're going to get into some of that stuff in a little bit here, but as we always do, Alan, kind of go through the injury rundown here. One little change: TJ Watt actually listed as a limited participant today after a DNP yesterday, obviously dealing with the ankle thing. I saw some clips, obviously, of what he was doing. Is that one of the? Did you post any of him on the YouTube? I know, obviously, DeShon Elliott doing some stuff as well. I don't know if there was any footage of TJ, but he's in a limited participation today. What do we make of that? Any sign in a positive direction for him on Saturday?
Yeah, so I mean, I would put sort of George, TJ, and DeShon Elliott all in basically the same category, even though TJ was listed as limited and the other 2 guys were not, and that they were all at practice today. They were all doing physical stuff. Like Justin Fields was there, but just standing around. Like the other guys were all there doing stuff, and at far less than full participation. The difference is that TJ has a joint injury and the other 2 guys have muscle injuries. So it's a little bit easier to see TJ being able to play through it. For him, it'll be more about just, can he handle the level of pain? What can he do and what can't he do? Where the other guys are going to have to deal with the threat of injury reoccurrence, which is less of an issue when you're talking about a twisted or sprained ankle. And so I think that leads me to believe that TJ has a better chance to play than either of those 2 guys. Larry Ogunjobi, limited for the 2nd straight day, would think he's trending towards playing, and no sign of Donte Jackson for the 2nd straight day would say he's leaning towards probably not playing.
Okay. We'll talk about Cory Trice in a little bit as well as it relates to that. rest days for Landon Roberts and Cam Hayward. You mentioned Justin Fields, Donte Jackson, DeShon Elliott, George Pickens. I was going to bring up Larry O if you didn't, so I'm glad that you did. So, but based off what you're saying, do you think there's more so than George and DeShon for TJ? But does that mean you think right now you feel like he's going to, or would you lean no still, just a better shot than those two others?
If I had to guess, I think TJ Watt will be able to play at least in some capacity this week. I don't know what that will look like, but I think he'll be able to play at least a limited role.
And tomorrow would today have been the big day or like tomorrow the big day to watch in terms of participation?
Well, like the second straight day where practice was not really practice. I mean, this is like
okay,
2 straight Friday practices. So, and just in terms of like not only the tempo, the cadence of practice, but another early day of practice was over very early again today. And so, like really short work week for the team. So I'm not sure there is a big one, to be honest. Yeah, but we'll see if they actually work tomorrow. That will be the big one, but I don't know if they are going to or not.
Interesting. Okay. On the Ravens side of things, I mean, there's a couple ones to monitor. Big one for me, though, just popped up. Rashad Bateman with a foot injury. Not sure what's going on there, what capacity he's going to work in over the next couple of days, or if he'll be ready to go on Saturday. And I say that that's a big one because I feel like he's really started to come on the last couple of weeks, his connection with Lamar Jackson, and also the way that Zay Flowers, for whatever reason, has played against the Steelers in the past, too. I feel like Rashad Bateman, and obviously with what's going on with Deontay Johnson, they need as many weapons as possible in the pass game. So something to monitor there with Rashad Bateman, certainly. What's your take on that and just like his involvement within the Ravens pass game in general?
I mean, I think this Ravens pass game is kind of interesting in that like it's not really about the ability of the wide receivers. It's all about just how long Lamar can make you cover. And then they come open eventually. And then the tight ends are really good. Obviously Bateman hurts, but it's not like other teams, right? It's like if Philly was playing without Devontae Smith, like that'd be a big loss. I just think it's kind of plug and play for the Ravens, a wide receiver to some level.
Yeah, I mean, they saw Tez Walker catch his first touchdown. They got like a Tylan Wallace, who mainly is a special teams contributor, but obviously I feel like would step into more of that role just because of the body type that he offers.
Yeah, Aguilar.
Nelson Aguilar as well. So yeah, I just think it's something to monitor because it seems like he's been getting more involved. I think the talent's always been there, but he's been hurt a lot. Just got rewarded with a 3-year contract extension despite that. And I feel like over the last few weeks has really started to stack good weeks. But to your point, it could be like a lot of these are extended plays where Lamar's running around for like 10 seconds, it seems like, and then ends up finding a guy down the field. And a lot of times Rashad Bateman's been on the receiving end of that over the last few weeks. So just something to monitor there. I wanted to dive into some of the conversations that you said that you had. We talked about Donte Jackson. We just talked about one of the Ravens receivers. So I wanted to turn to Cory Trice here. We haven't seen him get a helmet since coming back into the mix. But if you're not going to see Donte Jackson, I'd like to assume Cory Trice would get a helmet in that capacity. Obviously, James Pierre could be the first guy up in terms of seeing those snaps. What did Cory Trice have to say? Do you feel like he's ready to step into that type of role?
Yeah, Cory said he's just sort of like everybody else, just wait and see. Hasn't been told anything official or unofficial about whether or not he's going to play this week. But I feel good about him playing this week. And I think he should be the one to start if Donte Jackson doesn't. For only really one reason. And that one reason is I think they need to get a look at him because they have a decision to make about Donte Jackson this offseason. Obviously, the health concerns that he brought with him from Carolina are real. He's been injured 3 or 4 times this year. Joked about it yesterday. And if Cory Trice can do that job pretty well, I think that really changes the offseason outlook at that position for the Steelers. And there are maybe they're going to get a Week 18 game that doesn't matter where they could kind of mess around with stuff like that. Maybe they won't. This just feels like a good opportunity. Like the Ravens corner or wide receivers aren't like so good that you feel like you'd be feeding him something he can't handle. I don't know. I just think it would be a good opportunity to get Cory Trice a game and check in on where he is now here in year 2, back from his second injury. I thought he looked good in the Broncos game before he was hurt. So that's kind of what I would do. I'm not sure what the Steelers are going to do, but that's what I would do at corner. And I think it's time. Like, you can't be a guy with potential forever. He's 24. Will be 25 next, spring, I think. And it's time for him to show some stuff, and it's time for them to give them a chance for them to give him a chance to show some stuff.
Yeah, I mean, I fully agree. As somebody that's been a fan of what Cory Trice could be, not saying that he's shown that yet, but I loved him coming out of college despite the injuries. Thought he was a guy that could go on the back end of day 2, or at the very least early on day 3. That's the type of talent that he possessed. And like, if you were building a corner, it looks a lot like him. I think athletically, the profile also looks very similar to Joey Porter Jr., and that's why people made the comparisons between the two. I could understand, like, this might sound weird too, but this thought entered my mind as well. I could almost see it making sense why they've gone about it the way they have, with him not getting a helmet over the last couple of weeks. And I think, like, in game, it makes more sense to maybe be able to go to a guy like James Pierre. But when you're preparing a team, knowing that, like, if you know Donte Jackson's going to be out and you have an entire week of preparation to get Cory Trice to be ready, I think that he should be the one to take the bulk of the snaps in that case.
Yeah, right. I mean, you're dressing James Pierre for special teams, and you also have Cam Sutton there. Now that's been taken away because Elliott's been hurt, but I think, like, the fact that they have Pierre and Sutton that they want to dress anyway, and they're dressing 2 slot corners, which they haven't always done. Like, there's a lot of positions where the backup is not necessarily dressed for game day, right? And I feel like they have a similar situation at tackle. Like, if Dan Moore, steps in the gopher hole tomorrow, and someone needs to start at left tackle, is it Calvin Anderson or is it Calvin Austin? Spencer Anderson. Wow. Yeah. Is it Spencer Anderson, who has never played left tackle but is the backup tackle that's on the 53, or is it Dylan Cook coming up off the practice squad? Like, for me, it's probably Cook. But if Dan Moore, hurts himself in the game, it's going to have to be Anderson because he's the only backup they have.
Yeah. Yeah, that's true. It seems like that's just one of those situations.
Actually, it would probably be Broderick Jones playing left tackle and Spencer.
That's what I was going to bring up. Yeah, yeah.
But anyway, there's lots of those examples where, like, the true backup is not really someone who dresses on game
day. Yeah, absolutely. We'll see. We just talked about TJ Watt, obviously, and him getting a limited participation is obviously a better sign. The arrow is pointing up for him. Talked about him punching another ball out this past week. Tyler Matakevich, you said, talked about that today. Like, what makes somebody actually good at doing that? You see people try to punch the ball out all the time. How does one player do it so much better than than the average player? What makes somebody good at that? Is it just a skill? Is it completely luck? What do we make of this, and what did Tyler have to say about it?
Great convo with Dirty Red today, because TJ passed James Harrison, and actually there's some conflict about whether he actually passed him or not. So if you go to Pro Football Reference, it credits Harrison as having 33 forced fumbles with the Steelers. The Steelers say that Harrison had 32. The difference is the Steelers are not counting a special teams fumble for Harrison in their fumble total, for special teams forced fumble, while Pro Football Reference is counting the special teams forced fumble along with all the defensive forced fumbles. So depending on how you count, Watt is either the record holder or tied with James Harrison. But Tyler Matakevich, I felt like, has an interesting perspective because he was obviously around at the end of James Harrison's tenure with the Steelers, and then obviously was around for a lot of TJ Watts. And he said TJ's kind of always been that way. It was like OTAs his rookie year. Guys would be like, who is this guy and why is he always punching the ball out? Like, it was just a thing that he was notorious for from day one. But he kind of compared him and Harrison as, like, James Harrison is like a blunt force instrument, and TJ Watt is precision. Like, when Harrison hit people, there was like blood and guts hanging out and broken bones, and also the ball fell out. If you go look at that play with Hurts from Sunday, TJ comes flying in with a full strength punch. He only hits football. Like, there is not 1 ounce of effort of that punch that is being wasted on the quarterback. It is just ball. And it's like, that's so so hard to do. Like, I just think it's one thing to say, like, yeah, go get the football. But, like, so it was just kind of interesting to compare and contrast the two styles. What makes TJ so good at it, And the Steelers also, are a team where there's some teams where if you go down there and you try to punch the ball out and you don't get him, and the guy gets 2 or 3 more yards because you didn't make like a form tackle, like you're coming back to the sideline and getting balled out by the defensive coordinator for not doing your job. And the Steelers are very open about, like, we don't care about that 2 yards. Go get the ball. Like, that's like the yards don't matter. The ball's what matters. And
we've seen Patrick Queen and Joey both, miss on punches this year and give up a couple extra yards over those.
Like, they're not trying to defend every blade of grass. They're trying to get the ball back. And so I think that it's a combination. It's not a surprise to me when you look at the NFL all-time forced fumbles leaders that it is littered with Steelers because it is just a philosophy of theirs that they want to go get the football, and they do not really care too much if they occasionally miss a tackle as a result of that mindset.
Yeah, I will say it seems like along with that, though, other than obviously the Eagles game being an outlier, they've gotten like they haven't even been missing a bunch of tackles this year. Like over the last couple of years, it's been something like the missed tackle percentage, but they've gotten drastically better in that area while not conceding in the turnover department and punching the ball out and still getting it.
Yeah. And so the other thing about forced fumbles is that hasn't been an official NFL stat for very long, since like the 90s. So like Greg Lloyd, I think like Pro Football Reference counts the older ones. So they count Greg Lloyd as the actual Steelers leader. But Greg Lloyd, 34 forced fumbles with the Steelers. James Harrison, 33 forced fumbles with the Steelers. TJ Watt, 33 forced fumbles with the Steelers. That's like almost consecutive. Like Lloyd played until what, maybe 90, I don't remember, 96, 97, and Harrison would have come around in 2002. So that's like nearly 40 consecutive or 30 consecutive years of forcing fumbles at a very high level at the same position on the same team.
By the way, the fact TJ didn't have a second one on Sunday too, by the way, I don't know how he didn't get that one. Yeah,
and all of those guys are in the top 20 in NFL history. TJ is now tied for 20th in NFL history with 33 forced fumbles.
Yeah. Also, like we're talking about Tyler Matakevich, he was drafted in 2016. I know that he was obviously in Buffalo for a bit there too. I feel like we never really talked about him in terms of Steelers that were on those teams, like when they were in the playoffs in the past. Like he never comes up probably because he did have a stint in Buffalo, obviously, but he would have been on the Steelers the last time they won a playoff game, and they went to the AFC Championship game that year.
Yes, he was. Cam Sutton is another guy who left and came back. Those two guys have that gap, but have been around for a while.
Yeah. Another conversation that was had today. We've talked a lot about the running game, and honestly, both of these are going to play into this. You said you talked to Mason McCormick about the run game today. I saw you having a lot of conversation on Twitter about the run game and the certain plays still, and obviously the YouTube comments have been going on about it. Not necessarily that one play in general, but just the run game. What was the conversation with Mason McCormick like, and how does he think they can get this thing on track?
Yeah, I mean, I think the crux of the thing is, like, when you look at the Eagles tape, there's like so many things that happened in that game that have not happened all year and probably will not happen again this year and may not happen again ever, that like it's kind of an easy one to move on from in a lot of ways. Like just you just have to like when you're really trying to analyze something, you have to understand that there are like a bunch of 1 in 100 or 1 in 1,000 chances that are eventually going to hit. And if like a bunch of them happen in the same game, you're probably going to lose. And there's not really anything you can do about that. Like, Naji Harris does not fumble. And I guess we'll talk like, that doesn't technically go down as a Naji Harris fumble, but like still, like he does not fumble very often. The Steelers have not turned the ball over very often, and they have a critical turnover when they looked like they were getting back in the game. The roughing the long snapper penalty on Montravius Adams, which I haven't done the research on, but like as far as I'm aware, I think that's the first time I've ever seen it called on a Steelers player. It certainly does not come up very often, if ever. just a lot of things like that happened in that game where it's like, yeah, but I think especially in the running game, like Darnell gets blown up on a play. That doesn't happen very often. Mason got beat badly on a play. That doesn't happen very often. I just think there's a lot of like, man, just a bad roll of the dice here in a lot of ways.
Yeah, I mean, I completely agree. That's why I think that we both preface by saying, even going into this one, and then certainly afterwards on the post game, that this wouldn't be one that changed our minds in terms of where this team was at or where they're heading or anything like that. Like, honestly, to me, the biggest thing was going to be about injuries and obviously, not knowing how long we were going to be without George and then DeShon and then also TJ getting hurt in that game. That to me was much more impactful than that one loss against the Eagles, where largely you can just, I don't want to say burn the tape. You obviously got to learn some lessons from it, but move on from quick.
Yeah, I just think there are a few. Let me just say this. I think it means there are few real lessons to be learned. Like the lessons to be learned are the Eagles are a lot better team and a bunch of weird.
This is what we want to be.
Right. Like the Eagles are a lot better team and a bunch of weird stuff happened and the Steelers lost. Like, I don't really know that there's a lot of like things that you can take from that game into next week's game and say, okay, here's what we need to work on to get better at to beat the Ravens. Like it honestly like doesn't apply.
Yeah. No, I agree. The other thing that you mentioned there was another thing that I wanted to bring up was Naji talking about the fumble, because we were calling it his first fumble of the season. And it had also been like 600, 700 snaps or something like that since his last one. But he actually wasn't credited with a fumble, because I guess he never had possession of the ball. Russ is obviously the one that tossed it to him. So Russ gets credit for the fumble. I'm saying credit, but obviously in a negative light. And Naji spoke about that and was kind of like baffled by that, but how does that's exactly what it is, because Naji didn't actually fully gain possession of it. It's credited to Russ.
Yeah. If you any toss, pitch, lateral, anything like that, where the second player never gains possession of the ball, the fumble goes to the first player. I think it's a dumb rule because like it's not very consistently applied. Like if you remember the fumbled snap for Justin Fields in Indy, where he wasn't even looking and it hit him in the arm, like that was credited to him. Like he didn't take possession of that. So like I don't really like the way that that's officiated. Should probably give the scorekeeper some leniency to try to determine some fault and say who.
Well, right, like how much. I feel like it would just be improved by just using common sense as opposed to like having.
If Russ made a bad pitch and it hit Naji in the foot, then it should be on Russ. But like, if it hits the running back directly in the hands and he just takes his eye off the ball, like, why don't we just give it to the running back? It doesn't make any sense.
Yeah, I don't know. But did you take anything away from what Naji had to say about that? I saw a lot of people I mean, we already know, I think, the type of teammate that he is and stuff like that. But did you take anything away from what he said other than that?
Yeah, I don't think like nothing that I don't think I learned anything new, but I think Naji is a stand-up teammate. Like he really wants to win, man. I think that's evident every day.
Kind of made me sad looking at him on the bench during that game after that fumble.
Yeah, I mean, I think you feel for him. Like that's a guy who gives his all, and has given his all in a tough situation. Like with the contract and like it would have been fairly forgivable from my perspective for him to be kind of checked out this year. And I think he's been the exact opposite of that. I think he's been super dedicated, super motivated, not just for himself, but for his teammates to win the game. And I think he deserves a lot of credit for that in general. It's funny because I think the Steelers kind of like put like this, like they tried to make Naji Harris into a leader when he was a young guy. And like, I think it took him a while to find the personality that he needed to have. Like he's not a like rah guy. Like he's not like okay guys, like passionate locker room speech guy. And I just think he leads with effort. Like TJ isn't that way either. He leads with effort and how much he cares. Like, he really cares. And I think it's evident when you really watch him. And yeah, tough spot, but full marks for stepping up and taking responsibility. And yeah, you can tell how much he cares. You really can.
Yeah, which I feel like, again, I feel like he always does in that position. So I do want to get to one question on here that I was kind of scrolling past and found. This was actually from a couple days ago, so I'm surprised I didn't see it because I actually kind of like this one. Mr. RVD 305. I'm going to go ahead and assume this is not Rob Van Dam, but in case it is, hello, Rob. Big fan of your work, both in the ECW and WWE. But he said, do you feel any different about this one game in Baltimore as opposed to the Steelers-Ravens recent history? Why or why not? For me, I didn't realize until just now that Lamar hasn't actually played against the Steelers in Baltimore in a stadium with fans. Do you feel any different about this one, being that that's the case, or any other variables?
I mean, I think, like, look, if you look at the Steelers, what is it? The one, like, 7 of 9?
8 out of 9.
8 out of 9?
Mm-hmm.
Like, I'm not thinking that the Steelers have an 89% chance to win, or 91% chance to win this game. Like that's like, the teams are much closer than the recent record suggests. Also, Lamar not playing in a lot of those games definitely tilts things in their fashion. This will be a very tough game to pick. I know we're not, we're still 2 days away from that, but like, I think this is going to be a really difficult game to pick, because I think a lot of the things are going to be lined up against the Steelers when you look at things sort of rationally. And then you have this, like, the Ravens can't beat the Steelers thing. And, like, it's not like the Steelers-Eagles. Like, this matters. Like, these are these two teams.
That's what I was going to say.
Field,
yeah.
These players over and over again, like the same head coaches, a lot of the same coordinators, most of the same players. Like, those, yes, that matters. Like, the 65 thing with the Eagles is trivia. This is real. I just wonder how real it is. I think it's going to make trying to pick this game fairly difficult.
Could some of those games certainly have gone in the other direction? Yes, but they didn't. And the only loss within that 9 that the Steelers have is a game where Mitch Trubisky turned the football over 2 times in Ravens territory, and the Steelers lost that one 16-14 at Acrisure Stadium in 2022. So, like, I there's something there, obviously, to it. I think the Steelers have the blueprint for defending this offense. It's been that way regardless of if it's been Keith Butler or Terrell Austin. It's a Tomlin thing. And as far as, like, the offense goes now, we've seen them go from Greg Roman to Todd Monken, who I have a ton of respect for and love what he does on the offensive side of the ball. And it's the Steelers have still found a way to dominate this rivalry. So I don't know. I'm not making my pick yet, but yeah, I like you. I do agree that there's actually something to this, and it's not just like by happenstance that they've won 8 out of 9.
It's 8 out of 9, and also they had won like 4 of 7 before that. So, like, it's been it's a really nice trend. The Ravens, I think, have swept the Steelers 4 times ever. Okay. So they got to Baltimore in 96. So, like, that's some pretty solid play there.
Yeah. But appreciate the question. I do think that there is, I think that's basically what they were getting at, was, does this one feel any different? I am curious to see Lamar in Baltimore with a capacity stadium, because the only other time that he's played the Steelers in Baltimore, 2020, obviously the Robert Spillane pick 6 game, the first week that he had to start after Devin Bush tore his ACL.
Alex Highsmith had an interception in that game too, right?
He did. Yes, he did. Yep. In fact, he did. Alan, anything else?
I don't think so. I'm looking up the box score from the 2020 Steelers-Ravens game now, because I'm curious who was Lamar.
Chase Claypool, Eric Ebron. They had touchdowns for the Steelers.
Well, I'm more wondering about who was LeBron throwing to. Like, who were his? That's the one in Pittsburgh. I need the other
one. Willie Snead was definitely on that team.
Miles Boykin.
Miles Boykin.
Miles Boykin had a touchdown in that game. Yeah, Willie Snead had 5 catches for 100. Here's the receivers. Hollywood Brown was in the game, 1 catch for 3 yards. I don't know why or how he was not used more. But Willie Snead, Devin Duvernay, Miles Boykin, and James Prochet were the other receivers. Like,
yeah,
not a lot to work with there for Lamar. Willie Snead had 100 yards, which is just
one of the very few, I'm guessing, in his career.
I would have to assume that Willie Snead does not have a lot of 100-yard games in his career.
Yeah, maybe there's some trivia for you. But all right, Alan. If nothing else, tell the people where they can find you.
Also, it seems like it is bad weather every time we go to
yeah.
Like that game was in the rain. Ben's last game there was disgusting. Last year was like 40 degrees in rain. And so I think like that part of it is there too. I don't know that has always, affected one team more than the other, but it does seem like the weather is just always miserable.
I'm looking right now, cold, but I don't see any precipitation.
Cold, but nothing crazy. A little windy, but that stadium's pretty well, big walls, not super susceptible to the wind. Nice stadium if you've never been there before. I like it. I think the best of that era of stadium, the ones that were kind of built in the late 90s and early 2000s.
Okay. I've never been. So, all right. But anyways, Alan, tell the people they can find you.
Saunders _PGH on X, Instagram, TikTok, and Blue Sky. PGH Steelers Now sites account, SteelersNow.com. Go there, read the words so I can get paid. Like, subscribe, hit the bell for notifications here on the YouTube channel so you don't miss an episode of Steelers Sights and Sounds. Morning Rush, Afternoon Drive, Steelers Spotlight with Aaron Becker. Confirmed good guest for Friday this week. It will be so you'll have 3 shows on Friday this week. 3 of them.
Boom.
Who has it better than you? No one.
Hit that notification bell so you do not miss any of it. Hit us in the comments with your thoughts on anything that we talked about today or a question for a future episode. Leave us a 5-star review and subscribe if you're listening somewhere else, Apple, Spotify, wherever you get your podcast from. You'll find us there. Just search Steelers Afternoon Drive. Do the same thing on TikTok, and then you'll find me everywhere. Zachary Smith, PGH, for Alan Saunders, and myself. Thanks for jumping in. Take another ride on the Steelers Afternoon Drive.